Welcome to Break the Mould with Anwyn. I'm here today with Clare Wood, and she is a money mindset coach. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I call myself a money mentor, but
A
money
money
mindset's
mentor.
definitely one of the things that I do. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Oh, no, thank you.
It's an honor to be here.
And what's your business?
I help business owners to make more profit in their businesses. And I do this two ways. One, I help them actually with the practical side of their business finances. So I'm a qualified accountant by trade. I'm a CPA and I teach, how to actually manage your money. And I also do a lot of work in the space of money mindset. So working with people's beliefs around money, helping them to clear their fears, limiting beliefs, and step into their next level of growth.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so, how did you come about to decide that this was for you?
Well, um, look, I went, at school, I was really good at maths and I went and did accounting and I worked as an accountant for many years. I don't think I'm quite cut out to be an accountant. I didn't like the monotony of doing the same thing over and over again, but I did move into a commercial manager role, which was more providing overall commercial advice for
Right.
businesses, organizers. I was working for a large organization, helping them with that. And then when I got pregnant with my first son, I was made redundant, which one
Wow.
in four women in
Yeah.
Australia are made redundant while either pregnant or on maternity leave, which is a mind-blowing stat to me in today's day and age. But yeah, I was one of those statistics. And my husband had recently started his own business. So I was helping him with his business while trying to look after the baby. And then he said to me,
Mm.
people could pay you for this. I was trying to think about going back to work with a little baby. And so
Mm.
I put it out there. I told actually he's my husband's auntie, and I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do like consulting, sort of coaching work. And she landed me three unpaid clients within a week. And it just has grown from there. I've gone on to, that was 8.5 years ago. I've helped clients to scale their businesses past $1 million, multiple clients. I've written a best-selling book. My podcast has been running for 5 years now. And I'm just really blessed to be able to do the work that I do to help people to live their best lives.
Mm. Mm. And so I heard you say that everything changed when you stopped assuming that wealth was for only other people. So what was that moment that brought you to that decision?
Oh, well, my money mindset journey actually began because a friend of mine referred me to someone else who does this. Her name's Denise Duffield Thomas. And a friend of mine said, you should join like this program that she does. And my eyes were just really open because I'd grown up in a household without a lot of money. And
Yeah.
the way that she spoke about money and about how our stories, our traumas, our beliefs around money actually hold us back. And she lived in a beachfront home. And I just thought, whoa, that's so crazy. I never even would have allowed myself to think that was possible. And yeah, through just starting to understand more about, well, why not me? Like I was
Mm.
just thought that wasn't for me. And now I actually do. I live in a beachfront home. It is absolutely mind-blowing to me to even still think that. But yeah, it basically started when I started saying, well, why not me? And how can
Yeah.
I start to build a life of wealth?
Mm. And so what were those family stories that you had growing up?
Yeah. So look, I'm one of five children.
Yeah.
So anyone, well, that's unfair. Not everyone from a big family struggles financially, but look, we certainly did not have a lot of money. I remember when there was just four of us, the four of us were in two bunk beds in one room in our two-bedroom house. I mean,
Right.
and I guess the things that my kids have been privileged enough to experience in their upbringing were just so far removed from what my life was. I'll share some examples. You know, my kids have both been overseas
Mm.
multiple times. I didn't leave the country till I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
You know, we regularly eat out at restaurants, and my kids drink baby chinos. And I think I don't even remember either of my parents ever having a takeaway coffee my entire life. You know,
Mm.
it just wasn't an option to do things like that. And, you know, there was a lot of love in my household. I don't, you know, I know that there's a lot of people who are a lot worse off than me, but, you know, the money was tight. And I remember that, you know, one of my small money traumas was that I remember that the toothpaste, we bought this home brand toothpaste, and it was just disgusting because Colgate was too expensive. And it's funny how those little things that,
Yeah.
you know, it's a very little thing, but it sticks with you. Yeah.
So true. Like I've heard that, like if you replace the word money with energy, then it can change it too. Like it's just how we look at it, because there's a lot of stigma around having money, isn't there? You know, like people
Absolutely.
say, yeah.
And the thing that I like talk about a lot in this space is that all money is an energetic exchange. Like if you think
Mm.
back to when money, you know, money wasn't around when we first got started, and people used to trade, and we'd say, okay, well, you know, I want a chicken and I've got, you
Yes.
know, water, and I'll give you a gallon of water for a chicken. And people say, no, I want, you know, 2 gallons for a chicken. And so you'd negotiate, and you'd reach a point, and you'd say, okay, this feels fair for both of us. And then you'd swap. And so this is all that money is. And, you know, it's really easy for us to look at other people and say, you know, like, for example, we can look at celebrities and we can say, you know, they're not really doing heavy work. You know, it's not like they're in there in hospitals, like our nurses who are,
Mm.
you know, really doing quite dirty, heavy work. But the thing is, the way that it works is it's like someone perceives the value in that. People
That's
are
right.
paying
Mm.
big money to go and watch movies. And so advertisers are behind it. And so therefore, there is the perceived value that their time to create a movie is worth whatever it is, 10, $20 million, because people around the world are paying more than that to go and watch the movie. And so when we think about energy, our value exchange, all of those things, it's like, well, there's a point where you'll say, I am paying that. Or alternatively, where you say, I'm not going to work for that. So it's really just about finding that balance. And it truly is like supply and demand. You can say no if it doesn't feel aligned. If you don't want to work for a price, you can say, I'm not going to take that job. And if you don't want to pay however much to buy something, then you don't have to.
Yeah. 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 It's all about our belief, isn't it, of how much we value ourselves.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
and it is an exchange, and it's like if you have something valuable to give, then it's like doing other people an injustice not to supply that,
Yeah.
because yeah, if they need it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's the thing, is that the supply and demand will be there. If people are saying, I'm not going to pay that price, well, then that's what the market's telling you. And conversely, if you put your prices up, I know some people that tell me they're booked out for 3 years in advance. And I'm like, why don't you increase your prices? Because obviously the market's telling you that you're very in demand at that particular price. So I think it's about finding what that looks like.
Yeah. Do you think you have to be on the same page as your partner, like in regard to money?
Oh,
Like,
well.
was he, is he got similar money beliefs?
Yeah, look, I have to say my husband and I are very similar in the space of money, um, around like our value sets, what our goals are, but also that changes over time. And a lot of times people say to me, my partner's not on board or whatever it might be. But I mean, ultimately in any relationship, you either get to say there's not an alignment here and we're not going to continue it forward, or you are growing together. And I think that this is the thing. I mean, my husband and I, you know, our life now looks so different to when we first met. We were both employed. He had a massive mortgage. I had no financial commitments. I wasn't really looking for any sort of commitment. And yeah, and we've sort of really evolved together, and we've grown as a couple. So when I started all of this money mindset work, he was coming on that journey with me as well. And we were working out what were the things that we wanted both individually and as a couple. A partner is coming on that journey with you. Sometimes they're not. And ultimately, you don't need to believe exactly the same things about everything all the time to have a great relationship. But there are going to be things where, if you're not on the same page, I think ultimately it will cause conflict in the relationship.
Yeah. So you have similar values.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's important in your relationship?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, we are next to each other nearly all day, every day. And I honestly, I don't get sick of him. He doesn't get sick of me. We just get along really well. And so fun. We definitely both have big goals and ambitions. We want to build a dream house here. We love to travel. We both really care about helping and trying to make a difference in the world as well. We want to be great parents to our kids and great role models as well, and give them a great life.
Yep.
And yeah, I
And
think
so
that
part of
a lot
that
of
would
those.
be, showing them that anything's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that money doesn't have to stop you from doing anything. Yeah, or that it
Yeah.
is actually what can create any possibilities. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
we are really trying to talk differently about money to the way that it was spoken about when I grew up, because,
yeah,
on repeat, I heard we can't afford that, we can't do that.
yep,
And so with my kids, I sort of say things like, well, how do you think we could do that? I don't say, oh, we can't afford it and I don't know how it's going to
yeah,
happen. We just say, well, I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but we are trying our best. We are working towards it. And I'm like, what are some ideas you've got around how we could make money? And they sometimes say, I'm going to sell ice blocks. Clearly, they don't know how much it costs to build a house these days. But I'm like, that's a great idea. And I'm like, when are you going to do that? And, we sort of encourage them to think about, rather than just this isn't going to happen. It's like, how can it happen? And what do you need to do? And, you know, allowing them to have big dreams.
yeah. And it's about taking those actions, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and building on it and having repetition
Yeah.
and building those habits.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so our emotions affect our habits in that regard. So would you say, like you've talked about your trauma that you've had, like you had quite a serious car accident?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did that affect your money situation?
Oh,
Like,
okay. Great question.
or maybe around your mindset about the money, when that happened?
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things happened. So just to backtrack for the listeners, 2 years ago, I was driving on the M1, which is a freeway here in Queensland where I live, and I got rear-ended by a semi-trailer truck.
Ooh,
I felt the impact, pulled the car over, and was sitting on the side of the road in complete and utter disbelief of what had just happened.
yeah.
And, rang the police, and
So
the police.
did they drive away?
No, no, no. The truck driver was there as well. Although it was kind of strange because he didn't get out of his car. He just stayed in the truck.
Okay.
And I thought if it was me and I'd run into someone, I
You'd
would
want to
go
check.
straight over. Are you okay? Oh my goodness. You know, I understand that perhaps from a legal perspective, he didn't want to admit liability,
Yeah.
but still just to not even get out and come and say, hey, are you okay? Was very bizarre.
Mm.
But anyway, the policeman's like, you were so lucky to be alive. I had a big BMW X5, and he said, these cars are just tanks. You're very lucky.
That's so good.
By the end of the day, I realized that I had incurred a very severe whiplash injury. I didn't realize it at the time, but then by the end of the day, my neck had completely started to seize up, and the extent of the injury became apparent over the coming weeks. I lost so much mobility. I couldn't hold things. I couldn't
Oh,
lift my arms up, because what happens, everything's all connected through your nervous system. I didn't know this.
yeah.
And
Yes.
so all your nerve endings in your hands, you lose function. And it's just a result
Mm.
of the weakness in your muscle set. So, a couple of years on, I've been doing I do weights training. I've done so much
Oh,
rehab in the space of my physical health and also my mental health that, I'm in a much, much better place now. The reality is I am always going to have a chronic pain injury. So to answer your question around the money side of it, I was incredibly lucky that we had
mm.
a cash buffer. So when I had the injury, I met people, like for example, at the police station when I was doing the report, this woman said my accident was 8 years ago. I haven't been able to work in 8 years from a whiplash injury.
Oh,
I was
wow.
hearing all kinds of horror stories. And I just said, this is not going to be my path. And again, I'm
Mm.
recognizing my absolute privilege here that I was in a position that we were funding the bulk of my rehab. That looked like seeing a psychotherapist. I was seeing a physio multiple times a week. The insurance company funded some of it. I know that if I had just relied on what they were willing to pay for, I would have had a completely different outcome.
Yeah,
And
right.
so, yeah, I'm very, very blessed that I was supported through that journey, and was able to fund it, because I think how many people, yeah, just unfortunately wouldn't get the same sort of outcome that I've been able to get. So
Yeah.
yeah, money played a role in that. Obviously, it affected my ability to earn as well.
Mm.
Particularly the first 3 months, I was sobbing like around the clock. I was couch bound. I was a shell of my former self. And yeah, it's pretty hard to rock up and be
Yeah.
motivational
Yeah.
when
And
you're you know, barely keeping it
yeah.
together yourself.
And how did that affect your relationship?
Yeah, look, my he's amazing. He's really incredible. And he was very supportive. I don't know if this is oversharing, but it affects your sex life. It affects your,
Yeah.
he was having to do basically everything. I couldn't even lift a
Yeah.
basket of washing. I couldn't
Wow.
sweep. I couldn't vacuum. I couldn't
Mm.
even make the kids lunches because I couldn't hold a knife.
Oh, good.
And I
Yeah.
do remember that there was a day where he just snapped at me. He was really getting, my heart just goes out to anyone that works as a carer, because it's a lot, especially
Yeah.
with two young kids running a business. You're trying to look after. And I was still relatively independent in the fact that, I could shower myself, I could feed myself. I know that a lot of people, um, you know, unable to even do that. So then you're then also caring for that
Yeah.
person as well.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm going to be honest, it was really hard. It was hard on us, but he was great. And yeah, and you get through it and you come out the other side. And there's a lot of blessings that happen when you go through something traumatic and you learn lessons off the back
Mm.
of it.
And
You
so what was the big takeaway from that experience for you?
just gratitude.
Mm.
Sometimes now I'll be hanging out the washing and I just stand there and I think, I couldn't do this. Like, I'm here. I
Yeah.
can lift a washing basket and I can put my arms up over my head because I couldn't do that. And there's
Mm.
so many people who aren't in a position to be able to do that. I could have been in a much, much worse situation. I'm extremely grateful to be alive. I'm extremely grateful that we were in a position to be able to support my rehabilitation. Like I said, again,
Yes.
I recognize my privilege around that. And yeah. And I think that when you
Mm.
do go through a big trauma, it changes you forever.
Mm.
It
Mm.
really does. And yeah, and I'm just focusing on the positives.
Yeah. And with the you said that you had a buffer. So what is is that something that you think is really important when you with money, that you plan for these things?
I normally do not have a big cash buffer, but I do recommend it for people. Look, one of the things that we also did as two entrepreneurs is that we both have trauma insurance. So we have privately, again, paid for insurance so that if we are ever in a situation like that again, I mean, then you've got an option to go and say, okay, so if someone got cancer or whatever it might be, at least you know that you have got some sort of protection there. So yeah, if you don't have a savings account or anything like that, do you have your get out of jail free card? Do you have something that you can go to, particularly when you're self-employed? We are incredibly exposed to the things that can, traumatic events when they do happen. So yeah, definitely something to have a think about.
And so is that a decision you made after that car accident?
We actually had it before then. And the reason for that, one of my dear friends, he unfortunately got cancer in his late 20s. And I was really concerned for them at the time. But his wife shared with me, well, we got a payout because we have this insurance. And we sort of had a moment at that time. We went, whoa, this is something we should think about. So we have had that cover there for a while.
And something that I've heard, it's better to be a creator rather than a competitor. So that means that with money that you create the money that you have, but there's no lack. Like if you have money, it doesn't mean that somebody else misses out.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to be honest, it's still something that I have to work on all the time myself. I'll see someone hitting a milestone or something in their business, and I do get this pang of jealousy and envy. And then I go, whoa, okay, there's another new story that I need to work on. Or I see someone doing something and I think, I'm not in a financial position to do that at the moment. And then I'm like, hang on, your jealousy, firstly, doesn't make you any more money, but it also, we need to celebrate others' successes and ask that question, like, how are they doing it, rather than hating on them. What can I do? How do I need to get my business or my money mindset or whatever it might be back on track so that I can be achieving those outcomes? Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's also interesting too that there's people that have made a lot of money, like say, for instance, Steve Jobs, but he would probably be not rated very high on the relationships angle. And so like, is that important that your values are like across the board? Like it's sort of like it trickles down to everything, like how you are with one thing is how you are with a lot of things. Like you could have a high value for, being financially independent, but then your value for your relationships is low. And so, but then, he's still successful. Yeah. So is that important too?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that, again, this comes back to people having opinions around other people's worth, net wealth, etc. And at the end of the day, some very, very rich people are not nice. And some very, very rich people are lovely and have very fulfilled and happy relationships. And I think that focusing in on that, I see so many people online who are saying, blah, 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 this person should be doing this with their money. And I'm like, at the end of the day, though, it's their money.
Yeah.
Like they can do what they want with their money. If you think you can do better with your money, great. But a lot of times I do find that people are sitting there throwing stones at other people. And I'm like, how much money are you actually giving? Like, what are you doing in your own circle of influence as compared to using that energy on others? And I think that is what I just really want to empower people to do is I'm like, hey, well, great, get out there, make your own money, make your own decisions around money. And yeah, again, what success looks like for you, you get to define. I know that Elon Musk famously works like crazy, and maybe that's not your value set. And so you get to say, well, what does success look like for me? Maybe you say, if I want to become really wealthy, it comes along with a lot of work-life balance and spending time with my family.
And so what are some tips to help people like start to plan for a better future for their finances?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing you can do is education, is reading books, doing courses. The more that you can be around the energy of learning and take some things, other things you might say that's not for me. In the space of personal finances, I loved the Cashflow Quadrant book by Robert Kiyosake. Really got me thinking differently about money. Um, there's another book, what's his name? The Barefoot Investor. And
Oh,
he
yes.
talks about some really practical strategies around actually, managing your money. And then on the business front, again, like lots of money mindset books. I've written a book called Intentional Profit. There's other books like Get Rich Lucky Bitch. There's Chillpreneur. There's another book called You're a Badass at Making Money. And a lot of these books will really help you to reframe how you think about money. And I think that the more that you can just immerse yourself and educate yourself in this space, then yeah, that's one of the keys to really starting to say, does this work for me? Does this not work for me? What am I going to take from that? And how can I use this to change my future financial position?
Yeah. So have you been in a relationship like before like your present one where money was like came between you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I had a partner that I lived with before, and circumstantially, in the time that we were together, he wasn't working. And as the I don't want to say provider, but as the person who was sort of paying the bulk of the bills, it genuinely didn't bother me at all because, like I said, because of the situation, I'm like, well, this is the situation I'm in. I'm one of those people that I think in a partnership, there's times where one person's supporting the other person's supporting, we have joint finances but it was a real issue for my partner at the time. It can cause conflict. And I think as well, the biggest thing with success in relationships is around communication. And if I think that ultimately, if you can't be communicating around it, which I feel like we weren't very effectively, then that is where ultimately, things start to fall apart. So yeah, I do think that money, it's one of the top reasons why relationships don't work out. And I think that it is,
Yeah.
yeah, really important that you are, even you don't have to be completely 100% we think exactly the same way, but at least be working towards common goals, be aligned around what money looks like, how you're going to use it as a couple, or as a family. Then I think that that's what's important.
And do you think that maybe part of that was that he's the man in the relationship? Like you say, that stigma that men should be the breadwinner, that like there was, yeah, some feeling that of failure, maybe.
Yeah, look, I think that there's still, we've made a lot of progress as society, but I still think there is a lot of stigma. And, if a male isn't the primary breadwinner. And I think that it's really antiquated. And, I know a lot of people in my world where the woman is the breadwinner and the husband's the stay-at-home partner, and,
Yeah.
the person who's making sure that the household's ticking along, which is an incredibly important and undervalued role. And I
Yeah.
think that it really just is about, yeah, around the mindset of it really is the hardest thing. Like I said,
Mm.
for me, it didn't bother me at all. I loved my job. I was earning great money. It really just made sense to me, given the circumstances around that situation. So it didn't bother me at all, but I felt like it was definitely more of an issue for him than for me.
Mm. Is there something else that you'd like to talk about in the context of money with your relationship, that something that you think comes up?
Yeah, look, one of the things that me and my husband do that I think is like really a game changer, and I really recommend it for people in relationships, is that we have money meetings.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically every single week we sit down and we talk about money as a couple.
Mm.
And I've got an agenda. I know that sounds not very sexy, but it is what it is. We sit down and we talk about particular topics. We say, hey, what's happening with this?
Mhm.
How are we feeling around this? What's the progress around this? And having that time where we do sit and focus on our finances is really important, because I think that, again, a lot of times when conflict comes up, it's because we're not talking about these topics. And then someone makes a snide comment one day, and it can be really spiraling if you aren't having those uncomfortable conversations on the regular.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think that having our money meetings is something I'd really, really recommend for anyone in relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that. Like, it's if somebody else brings it up and then you're not, you don't really know what's going on with that, and then you're put on the spot, and that's because you haven't had the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I think maybe is this a belief that we had from the past that we weren't you're not meant to talk about money or something? It's rude to talk about money, but yeah, people don't have that conversation enough, do they?
Yeah, exactly. And the reason we avoid things that are uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And I can see why people avoid that. But often we find that the more that we avoid our fears, the more it becomes amplified. And for
So
someone
true.
like me who had a terrible public speaking phobia for so many years, and now, this is a big part of what I do.
Mm.
The way that I got through it, when everyone says, is I'm like, I just kept doing it again and again and again.
Yes.
And that's the thing with talking about money. The longer you avoid it, the bigger the problem's going to get. And the more that you have these conversations all the time, it just becomes a part of your regular cycle as a couple,
Yeah.
and something that you're just like, yeah, every Friday we have our money meeting. We sit down and we talk about this. And it becomes easier the more that you do it.
Yeah. 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 The truth sets you free.
Mhm.
You have to know your numbers to change them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to actually, track them so that you can see where you need to improve. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so going back to relationships, yeah, what what has been your relationship with money?
So my relationship with money's changed so much over the years.
Mm.
Obviously, I grew up and had none. That's not fair. I didn't have any. We didn't have luxury. We didn't have money to
Yeah.
spare. And then, I went through university, got a couple of degrees, moved to London, and I was suddenly, 25 years old, making 100,000 Australian dollars a year. And all of a sudden, I was like, this is amazing. And I went and was having a ton of fun. I was going out, I was traveling. I was able to just go and buy whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. And I realized how much fun money can be if you're not stressing about it.
Mm.
And that was kind of my situation for a long period of time. I met my husband at 33, so a little bit later in life, and I've just been having a ton of fun. I had a huge disposable income, and I was disposing of it. I was living life. Yeah, it was really good. And then now, we've got children and mortgage and all
Mm.
the things, and we're in a different season again where having to kind of balance having fun and being able to enjoy life with also these very real commitments that come along with
Mm.
the responsibilities that we have. So, yeah.
Also, just going back to what's important in a relationship, what else is important? So having fun is part of it. And what else is important in your relationship?
I definitely think having shared goals, having a shared
Yep.
vision of where you want your marriage or partnership, your family life, your, where you want to live, all of those things, they all play into it really strongly. And and common financial goals. Again, it's so weird. My husband and I'll say, I want to do this. And he's like, oh my gosh, I want to do that too. Or vice versa. He's like, hey, I'd really love to do this. And so I think that having shared vision is
Yeah.
really important. And obviously also having your own individuality.
Yes.
I think I kind of take for granted a bit the amount of space, I guess, that I am able to have in my relationship. And I was talking to a friend the other day about this, and she said, I have no time for me. Like she doesn't
Oh.
she doesn't do things. And I'm like, but I just do. Like I do yoga. And equally my husband has that time. He plays squash 3 times a week where he's out for multiple hours at a time. And we do give each other that freedom as well. And I think that for
Yeah.
someone like me, I'm a bit of a free spirit, but I don't feel at all trapped in my marriage. Like I feel like I can go and, I went overseas earlier this year on my own. And I think that having that freedom as well as that shared time together is, super important.
Yeah, so beautiful. And that you've got each other to support that
Exactly.
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you're doing your own thing, but you're supporting that goal together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. And so anything else that you'd like to add to relationships and money?
I just think that, the big key things is communication.
Yep.
And also I do think that the value of your life, the happiness you'll experience is very much dependent on your relationships. And I think that learning skills around relationships, we've done marriage counseling many times. We do therapy individually. Like your own growth and success will be dependent on how much you're willing to put into it as well. And, I've seen relationships fall apart that I'm like, you two should be together, but you just haven't done the work.
Make the effort.
Exactly. And it's really easy, in a long-term relationship to stop, complimenting each other and, and sitting down and looking at your money and say, hey, what are our goals? Because life's crazy and there's so much going on. But I think that you do have to do the work.
Yes.
And, together as well. So, one person cannot make a relationship thrive. It takes 2 people who are both willing to be there. And actually, my auntie said that to me many years ago. She's one of the top psychologists actually in Queensland. She used to sit on panels and things like that. And she said to me, there's only one thing that will make your marriage last, when I was asking her for advice. And she said, it's if you both want it to.
Yes.
And because
It's
I was
the
like,
decision.
someone doesn't cheat, or like, I thought all these things. And she
Yeah.
goes, all of that doesn't matter. Like, it's the decision that each of you choose that I still want to be there and that I'm going to do the work that I need to make it work. Because one person alone cannot make a relationship succeed, no matter how hard you try.
Yep.
And, and you can work through all kinds of things if you're both willing to put in the work that's required to get through it. So, yeah.
Yes, and as I've heard, it's you have to give 100%, not 50%. You actually have to give 100% yourself and make that decision. Yeah, that you choose to be with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I have done too. That turned our marriage around. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So thank you. And is there something else you'd like to add?
No, I really loved our chat today. And if anyone does want to get in touch with me, my
for sure.
social media is at Clare, CLARE _Wood _coach. You can send me a DM on Instagram. Or
have you got a course coming up?
I have a couple of courses that I run. One is around money mindset. So I do teach around, beliefs, limiting beliefs, fears, and how you can how you can start to really change your mind about money, create more
And
wealth in your life.
fantastic. And you're also doing public speaking events?
Yeah, I do events. I'm running a retreat later this year, which I'm really looking forward to in November. So there's all kinds of things that I do. I'm a busy bee.
How
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
I appreciate you giving your time today. Yeah.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much.